My guest today is Sarah Noel Block. Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How about you?
I am great. I am so happy to have you on this episode. And just to give everybody a heads up of your bio, you have been in the content marketing world for 16 years, and you've supported big shots like apartments.com, Prudential, but your heart lies in small teams. And you are the creator of Strategic Spark Workshop, the Strategic Story, and Tiny Marketing Framework. I, as a strategic strategist, love that. So let's go ahead and dive into some of that, where you got to where you are now.
Yeah, so we want to talk origin story. What made
16 years
me,
is a long time. So, yes.
yeah. We'll talk about like when the radioactive spider bit me and turned me into a spider marketer. So I was a one-person marketing department for a 7-company group, and it was so overwhelming. That's where I came up with my tiny marketing framework because I had 7 presidents I had to answer to. They all had their own business goals, revenue goals, their own audiences. They didn't even share an audience. And it made it really difficult. So I sat down one day when I was just feeling overwhelmed, like I was drowning. And I started to workshop what could make this work? How can I do this? And that's when I came up with this framework that I'm talking about today and my 1 by 5 marketing strategy, because you don't have to do everything, you don't have to be everywhere, and you can still sell.
Yeah, I'm so excited because I am actually working with a client who had a team, but the team dissolved. So now she needs to build up a new team. And
Ooh, my favorite.
yes, yes. So let's dive into the framework and what is needed for this 1 by 5.
Yeah. So the framework itself is streamline, systematize, automate in AI, and then outsource. So that's the basics of it. But in the streamline section, we have the 1 by 5 marketing strategy. And you're lucky because I literally just finished one for a client this morning and I pulled it up so I can reference it. But basically, it is choosing one thing in each of the categories. So, what is the one target audience that you want to clone? Who's your favorite customer that you want to replicate? Start there and start mind mapping. What are the challenges they're going through? What is their day to day life like? What would success look like? And that'll give you a good direction to go. And then go into the channel. What channel do they hang out on? Are they only on LinkedIn? Do they hang out on Instagram? Just pick one because you can't be active and engaged and build relationships on every platform. Next is outreach. What will be your outreach strategy? And it could be connected to your content. It could be you're creating a podcast and you interview people that are your target audience and you build relationships that way. That doesn't mean you're necessarily selling to the people that are your guests on your podcast, but you're building relationships with them and move them into like a nurturing experience where maybe you have a referral group or a community that you bring them to as kind of like an engaging parking lot party where you can engage with them while they're getting ready to move into that buying season for themselves. Core content. What content are you going to create? Just choose one. You don't have to do it all. Just choose one. And we can actually dig in a little bit deeper on that if we want to before we get into the last one, which is a lead product. So, a lead product would be your high value, low cost entryway product that someone can, an offer for most service businesses that someone can reasonably purchase without feeling uncomfortable, like, oh, I don't know if I can make that investment, but it's a way to build trust with them and move them through that process to your core offers. The little product that you have at the beginning to make them, to help build trust with them, and so they can say, okay, they actually know what they're talking about because I've experienced it now.
Right, right. So let's go into the core content. You said just pick one. Pick one what?
Pick one type of content. You could go a couple different directions when it comes to content. If you have zero team and zero bandwidth to create content at all, just spend an afternoon and do curated content. You can create a guide with articles related to a niche topic that is connected to your offer. Or you can create a podcast playlist. And that's just an afternoon. You're curating content. And the only rule is that it needs to be connected to your offer. It should be a niche topic. So there's curated content, there's collaborative content where you could be a guest podcast. You could go on other people's podcasts and guest. You don't need a ton of time for that. You can just choose to do one a week. You can do webinar swaps or newsletter swaps, things like that, where you're getting in front of a new audience, but you don't have to do a ton of heavy lifting on it. And it doesn't have to be a regular cadence. So it's great for people who they sporadically have a little extra time where they can work on things, but they can't be consistent about it. And then there's campaign content. So that's if, like, let's say you are launching a new offer and you want to make sure that it gets out there. You need visibility around it. So you just sit down and you create all your content at the same time, like a campaign, all leading to that offer. And then core content is what we were talking about. And that's the one thing you're willing to do on a regular cadence. So once a week, once a month, even once a year, if you're desperate, this is the content I'm willing to produce on a regular basis that people can rely on me for. But if you're going to go annual, okay, I can only do this once a year, go big. It should be like a virtual summit or a deep research report that you can repurpose and turn into newsletters and social media content and blog posts.
Because blog posts are good for SEO. Content is that it can be repurposed. Podcast topics can become blogs and webinars can become courses. And
oh my gosh, there's so much you can do. Let's say your core content, the only thing you're willing to create is an annual research report. That's it. You don't have the time for anything else, but you can connect with influencers, subject matter experts, potential customers, and ask for their insights on the research report that will be included in that. That's a way to build relationships. Like anytime you can build relationships and create more collaborative content, do it. My podcast, for example, a lot of my guests became referral partners, and that was by complete accident. It was just a relationship building thing. But going back to the research report, then you can have all of those influencers on a panel and do a virtual event where you have them all there. You can do webinars on the different subtopics in the research report. But all of the heavy lifting was only done once. Everything else is just distribution. And one last note on repurposing is not to just send it everywhere, just distribute the same exact thing everywhere. You need to recreate it for whatever channel you're going on. If you're on LinkedIn, copy and pasting a paragraph from your research report isn't going to do anything. You need to format it as a zero-click piece of content for LinkedIn.
what do you mean by zero click?
Social media algorithms hate when people click off of the platform. So creating content that lives and isn't meant to be clicked off of on that platform does best, especially like if we're talking LinkedIn, text-based content, no links.
Good to know. Good to know.
Yeah, they punish you.
That's a shame. Because, for example, I have recently started posting the links to the podcast episodes because I feel people aren't going to spend the time to look for the podcast unless it's right there.
You know, it's your podcast and you can do that just as long as all of your content isn't trying to get people off. I had a podcast go live on Sunday and I added the link to the post in my Monday post because, well, it's my podcast and I'm going to do whatever I want. But every piece of content can't be like that.
So you had mentioned earlier the use of AI in part of your framework. So how
Yes.
do you use AI?
My favorite way to use it is to interview people and then upload the transcripts into AI and then ask it to pull the information from that. So I get my own data, the information that I want, but it makes it so much faster to find the pieces of the conversation that mattered. So that's my favorite thing to use it for. And I do that a lot when I'm doing the Strategic Spark workshop that you mentioned earlier. I'll take those transcripts and put it in AI and then ask AI to find the answers to the questions that I know I asked, but I don't want to go through the transcript. Video editing and audio editing is a lot better with AI too. So I use Descript for my video and audio editing, and it'll do a lot of the heavy lifting for me. So I love that. Opus is great. Opus will cut your content, your longer form videos into short form, shorts, reels, whatever. I also use Buzzsprout AI to come up with my chapters and descriptions. Content at scale is really great too. You can use YouTube video, a podcast audio, or even just a keyword if you're looking for SEO, and it'll create a great first draft and even include like research with the links directly in there.
I hope the listeners like
Yeah,
pause.
did you have your notes out?
Pause or rewind to get all that information, because that was all great.
Yeah, I love anything that makes life easier. I think that you need to have like your base content needs to be really human this right now, but you can do a lot of things faster with AI.
Oh, definitely. One of the things that I have been using AI for is I have an event that's coming up. And so I have the event description. I'm like, give me an outline that aligns with what I already said the event was going to be.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Because that way I don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's already done.
Yeah, you had an idea of what you wanted, but this will create the like timestamps of when you need to do each thing, talk about each topic. That, speaking of another AI tool that I love for virtual events, is Butter. So I'll host the virtual workshop, but then their AI creates all of the notes from the workshop and grabs like the most engaged pieces of it. It creates chapters. It makes my workshops, like the people who couldn't attend live and get the replay, like it makes it so easy for them.
That's so awesome. The way I use AI is I have ChatGPT bot for my podcasting. So when it's just me, I'm like, I need a podcast topic and some talking points. Like I don't have the brain width or brain capacity to think about that right now.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea. I haven't done that, but I'm gonna try it out, see if they come up with something I can't.
Well, because like I have executive dysfunction. So it's like I have 2 hours before the episode needs to be live and I haven't recorded anything. So
yeah, I use AI for that. Pressure's on.
But it's all great. I personally love having guests on my podcast because the back and forth. I don't feel I am solely responsible to be the industry expert through the whole podcast.
Yeah. And it's fun meeting people too, because entrepreneurship is pretty lonely. Podcasting gives me an excuse to have conversations with people all the time.
Yeah, and you mentioned collaborations. Because I had interviewed some people, I ended up in October coming up with a collaborative project where I had a copywriter, an accountant, a virtual assistant, and myself with the system strategies, because every business needs those things.
Yes. So those were all guests on your podcast. Smart.
Do you have any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. If you haven't already, write down everything that you're doing right now and start eliminating, because there is probably a lot in there that isn't moving the needle. Have the conversations with your clients, find out where they're spending their time online and what content they engage with, and cut everything else out. You don't need to be overwhelmed and burned out just because you feel like you have to keep up with everyone else. You can keep up with everyone else on your own terms.
And that's when you are going to be more authentic to people and connect with your ideal client.
Yeah. If people connect with you in a real way, it'll be a lot easier to want that commitment of actually being a client. It's a really intimate relationship.
Yeah, even though we went through COVID and we've been all virtual, and I feel like the relationship building is getting stronger.
I think that we've learned how to do it in a different way. than we did before. Like you had to connect in real life before, where we've learned to adapt to that. And thank God we did, because I'm in my basement half the time. So I would be so alone.
Well, thank you again so much, Sarah, for coming on and giving some tips, a lot of great information, a lot of great tools that I personally am going to look into.
Good.